October 28th, 2012, New York City. Braces for another storm warning. Evacuation orders are dismissed. The subway is shut down for the first time. 375,000 people are told to flee, but most refuse. No one believes that a hurricane surge, amplified by a full moon and high tide, could actually flood a city built to withstand anything. Yet in hours, that disbelief will turn deadly. What made this wave unstoppable? A storm was born in the Caribbean on October 22, 2012. Just another swirl on the satellite map at first. Within days, it gathered strength, drawing in heat and moisture, growing beyond anything forecasters expected. By the time it reached the Atlantic coast, Hurricane Sandy had become a monster, spanning more than 1,100 miles from end to end, the largest Atlantic hurricane ever measured. But size was not its only weapon. Cold air swept down from Canada, colliding with the storm's warm core. The result was a hybrid system, half hurricane, half nor'easter, with energy that could not be contained by any forecast model. As Sandy tracked north, it veered sharply toward the New Jersey coast, an unusual path that aimed the storm's full force at New York Harbor. The timing could not have been worse. A full moon pulled the tides higher than usual, raising the water baseline by nearly 5 feet. At the same moment, Sandy's winds funneled a massive wall of water into the mouth of the harbor. New York's geography sealed its fate. The harbor is shaped like a wide-mouthed funnel, narrowing as it approaches lower Manhattan. Shallow waters in Raritan Bay and the Upper Bay allowed the surge to pile up, then squeeze through the channel, accelerating as it went. NOAA models later showed that this effect amplified the surge by up to 30%. The city's own shape became a conduit, channeling the ocean's energy straight into its heart. By the evening of October 29, the laws of physics had taken over. The tide, the wind, and the shape of the land combined in a way that made the surge unstoppable. No seawall or subway grate could stand in its path. The city was about to face a force it was never built to resist. On October 28th, the city took an unprecedented step. Governor Cuomo ordered the entire subway system to shut down, halting every train in New York for the first time ever because of weather. Mayor Bloomberg followed with a mandatory evacuation for Zone A, low-lying neighborhoods stretching from Lower Manhattan to the Rockaways and parts of Staten Island. 375,000 people were told to leave. Officials opened more than 70 shelters and held press conferences, warning of life-threatening flooding. But the warnings landed on a weary audience. Only a year earlier, Hurricane Irene had been hyped as a threat, prompting mass evacuations. Then Irene fizzled over the city, leaving many feeling misled. The phrase echoed everywhere. "We survived Irene. We will survive this." Compliance was spotty. Some people packed up and left, but tens of thousands stayed behind, convinced the city had overreacted again. In Red Hook, Coney Island, and the Lower East Side, families watched the news with skepticism, weighing the hassle of leaving against a risk they doubted was real. The clock ticked down toward high tide, and the city streets emptied, not from evacuation, but from anticipation, as people waited to see if this storm would be different. As the surge began its silent approach, the human variable, the refusal to believe the ocean could reach this far, set the stage for what would come next. At 7:30 in the evening, water in New York Harbor began to rise with a speed that caught even seasoned forecasters off guard. Tides pressed higher by the minute, pushed by the storm's vast winds and pulled by the full moon overhead. By 8 o'clock in the evening, the surge reached the seawall at Battery Park. It did not hesitate. Water spilled over, first in sheets, then in waves, rushing across plazas and streets that had always seemed untouchable. NOAA gauges at the Battery recorded levels climbing past 13 feet, then surging higher, 3 feet above anything measured in the city's history. The ocean moved with the force of a freight train, unstoppable and silent, swallowing curbs, sidewalks, and the first steps down into subway entrances. Eyewitnesses described it as a wall, not a wave, rising so fast that cars and trash bins floated in the current. The city's defenses, built for the storms of the past, offered no resistance. The Atlantic had crossed the line. At 8:59 p.m., a blue-green flash tore across the Manhattan skyline. The Con Edison substation on 14th Street had exploded. Salt water from the surge had breached the facility, shorting out transformers and high-voltage cables in an instant. In that single moment, 250,000 customers south of 39th Street lost power. Wall Street, Battery Park, and the financial heart of the city vanished into darkness. The blackout line was sharp and unmistakable, cutting through the city from river to river. North of 39th Street, lights still burned, but everything below was swallowed by shadow. Traffic lights blinked out, elevators stalled, and the hum of city life fell away. For the first time in generations, Lower Manhattan stood silent and powerless, its lifeline to the modern world severed by the sea. The city's defenses had failed, and now its core systems were blind and helpless, just as the worst of the storm pressed in. Breezy Point, Queens, sat at the edge of the Atlantic, a close-knit community built on sand and tradition. That night, 4 feet of seawater swept through the streets, rising into homes and garages, swallowing everything it touched. As the surge pressed in, an electrical short sparked inside one house. No one knows exactly where it started, only that the fire took hold fast. Flames leapt from rooftop to rooftop, carried by wind and fed by the same water that was supposed to stop them. Firefighters arrived, but the streets had become rivers. Trucks stalled in the flood, hoses dragged through salt water, powerless against the blaze. Neighbors watched from upper floors as fire and flood warred beneath them. By morning, 130 homes had burned to the ground, their charred remains surrounded by standing water. In Breezy Point, the impossible happened. An entire neighborhood drowned and burned at the same time, and no one could stop it. At 9:30 p.m., the surge reached its peak. Seawater burst through subway grates and ventilation shafts across Lower Manhattan, pouring into the heart of the city's transit network. The South Ferry Station, just steps from New York Harbor, filled to the ceiling in minutes. 80 feet of salt water swallowed platforms, tracks, and electrical rooms. Pumps meant to keep the tunnels dry stood no chance against the onslaught. The system was overwhelmed, taking in 600,000 gallons every minute, a volume faster than any crew could hope to control. 7 tunnels connecting Manhattan to Brooklyn and Queens became underground rivers. The Montague Tube alone took in 43 million gallons, enough to fill 65 Olympic swimming pools. Salt water, thick with debris, shorted out signals and corroded 100-year-old wiring. Subway cars sat stranded in darkness, their doors sealed by water pressure. For the first time in over a century, the lifeblood of New York City, the subway, stopped moving. The storm had drowned its engine room in less than an hour. On Staten Island, the water rose faster and higher than anyone believed possible. The surge pressed in from the harbor, climbing over seawalls and sweeping through neighborhoods that had never flooded before. By the time the water reached its peak, entire blocks were underwater. In the darkness, families scrambled to higher ground or waited on rooftops for help that would not come in time. The toll was devastating. 23 people lost their lives here, nearly half of New York City's total deaths from the storm. Among them were 2 young brothers, ages 2 and 4, ripped from their mother's arms as she tried to carry them to safety. Their bodies were found days later, a tragedy that echoed through the borough. Many on Staten Island felt abandoned, their calls for help drowned out by the chaos elsewhere. The sense of isolation lingered long after the water receded, leaving a community to mourn in silence while the rest of the city struggled to comprehend the scale of the loss. New York's seawalls are higher now, but so are the tides. Sea level rise has added another inch since Sandy, enough to tip the balance in the next storm. The ocean is patient, relentless, and always at the city's doorstep. The question is, are we ready this time?